Sleep quality and quantity are crucial not only for physical well-being but also for mental well-being, as well as having a large impact on a student's academic performance. With all of the activities and challenges that come with being a college student, we wanted to examine how those activities in different situations play a role in the number of hours of sleep college students are getting, along with how well they are sleeping at night. Specifically, we wanted to investigate the relationship between sleep quality and quantity and the number of credit hours a student is taking. Additionally, we wanted to examine how sleep quality and quantity relates to how often a student exercises, in addition to the relationship between sleep quality and quantity and a student's cumulative GPA. Regarding the number of credit hours of a student, we were mostly expecting to see a negative correlation where students taking more credit hours are getting fewer hours of sleep and possibly poorer quality sleep, seeing as how they would have to dedicate more time to their studies. With respect to exercise frequency, we expected to see a positive correlation where the more hours of sleep and better quality sleep a student gets, the more they will exercise. With the student's cumulative GPA, we expected to see a positive correlation here as well, where the more hours of sleep and better quality sleep a student gets, the higher their GPA will be.
So first, we use the survey to collect the data. Surveys are useful in describing the characteristic of a large population. And since our target population is the Ohio State undergraduate students, so it's quite large, and survey is a good choice to collect people's opinions about the questions. And the type of the questions are multiple choice and short answers. So multiple choice is type of the questions with a very fast processing times. And the participants will not spend too much time in filling the questions. So we may have more responses within a short time. And as for the short answers, we only ask age, credit hours, cumulative GPA, and weekly sleep hours for the short answers. These questions are all pretty easy to answer, and the results may vary a lot. For instance, some people will sleep a lot in a week, and some people will not. So now short answer is better than the multiple choice. So when we collecting the data, our group mates share the survey link to their social media account, such as Facebook. And they all share the link to the undergraduate student club. And we also share the link to the common messages to some of our classmates to ask them for help. And we also ask some friends to share the link to their social media account so that we may collect more data set. And for analyzing the data, we use RStudio. So R is a very important in data science because of its versatility in the field of statistics. And also RStudio is easy to write scripts and output or input graphs. You may also see several the graph we created in our result part. And it's pretty easy to create a graph in R, and also the graph are easy to read, and it's pretty precise. And also R has many functions and arguments that you don't really need to type the argument and functions word by word, but you just type the first character and then it shows up. So it's pretty convenient. And we use the hypothesis test, especially we use the chi-square test for analyzing our data. So the reason why we use chi-square test is because our research questions aim to find the association between sleep quality and cumulative GPA, and the association between the sleep quality and the amount of exercise time, and also the sleep quality, the association between sleep quality and the living area. Like, do you live in campus or out of campus, and do you have a roommate or not? So chi-square is a pretty easy and precise way to analyze the data. And for our chi-square test, the null hypothesis is there is no association between sleep quality and GPA, and for instance, the number of exercise time weekly, etc. And our alternative hypothesis is there is no association between sleep quality and the other factors. Our sample is drawn from Ohio State undergraduate students. Here we show the demographic breakdown of this sample for race, sex, and age distribution. So for sex, 2/3 of the sample was female and 1/3 was male. Next, you'll see the breakdown of race. The highest category of race is white, followed by Black/African American, then Asian, and finally the last category with the fewest responses was multiple. Finally, we've included the distribution of Asian students. The distribution is slightly skewed to the right and has a mean of 20.51 years and a standard deviation of 1.93 years. The median for age is 20 years. Our null hypothesis when running our chi-square test stated there is no association between quality of sleep and GPA in the population, while our alternative hypothesis claimed there is an association between quality of sleep and GPA in the population. The chi-square test we ran between quality of sleep and GPA had a p-value of 0.2398, which resulted in us failing to reject the null hypothesis. There was no statistically significant association between quality of sleep and GPA because our p-value was greater than the critical value of 0.05. Included in our table, our results show 9 students, 29% of our sample, with a GPA between 3.0 and 3.49 reporting good sleep, similar to 11 students, 39.3% of our sample, with a GPA between 3.5 and 4.0. In determining if there was an association between quality of sleep and number of credit hours in a population, our null hypothesis stated there is no association between quality of sleep and number of credit hours, while our alternative hypothesis stated there is an association between quality of sleep and number of credit hours. After running a chi-square test for these two variables, we found our p-value to be 0.9822, leading us to fail to reject the null hypothesis. No statistically significant association between quality of sleep and number of credit hours was found. In the table shown, similar proportions of students reported good sleep across all credit hours categories. 30% of the sample with less than 12 credits, 33.3% with 12 to 14 credit hours, 22.2% with 15 to 16 credit hours, and 38.6% with 17 to 18 credit hours. Lastly, our null hypothesis for our chi-square test between quality of sleep and amount of exercise in a population stated there is no association between quality of sleep and amount of exercise, while the alternative hypothesis stated there is an association between quality of sleep and amount of exercise in a population. The p-value for this test was 2.718 times 10 to the negative 9th, which meant that null hypothesis was rejected. We found a statistically significant association between quality of sleep and exercise. 40% of the sample who exercised at least 1 to 2 hours a week reported good sleep, compared to 18.8% of the sample who never exercised. We found that there is no correlation between the amount of credit hours a student takes and their average amount of sleep per night. So the average hours of sleep varied amongst credit hours, opposed to sleeping less with more credit hours, which was our original hypothesis. So in the beginning, we thought that
the students with more credit hours would sleep less than those with less credit hours. There was also a great significance between the hours of sleep a student gets and the frequency of exercise. So we found that with only 1 hour of exercise per week, students reported better sleep on average. For example, about 6% of those that did not exercise at all reported very poor sleep, but those that exercised for about 1 hour a week reported 0% reported poor sleep. The GPA of a student has no effect on the quality or quantity of sleep that they're getting per night. So we found that the quality and quantity of sleep varied amongst the GPAs that were reported by students. Originally, we expected for the students with a higher GPA to report a lower sleep quality/quantity, but that's not the case. For example, 9 students with a GPA between 3 and 3.49 reported good sleep, which was very similar to the 11 students that had a GPA between 3.5 and 4.0. The subjects of the study consisted of all undergraduate OSU students. We did have all genders, and we had students that were white, black, Asian, or multiple races, and the students were all in between the ages of 18 and 28, with the median age being 20, and majority of the subjects were female, and then they were also white. We obtained our subjects by spreading out our survey link through social media, Carmen messages, asking other friends for help, or throughout club organizations that are student ran through the university. And then we analyzed our data using the RStudio, and we performed the chi-square test to find the results for our hypothesis testing.